Hello, ladies. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Angela Simpson. For those of you that don't know me, I'm really happy to have you here. And I want to talk today about a topic for females that I know is really bothersome and it can really impact your life as you're getting into your 40s, possibly your early 50s. You're starting to notice that your sleep isn't that great. You might be having trouble getting to sleep. You might be waking up multiple times in the night, or you might wake up at some point in the night way too early and not be able to get back to sleep. And you might notice a trend or a pattern to this. It might be worse at certain points in your cycle, but it might also be there all the time. I do know I work with women all the time that are really feeling debilitated by this. Someone that I just started working with said that they are getting on average 2.5 to 4 hours of sleep a night. And they said they just can't cope, they can't function, they can't work. They've had to actually ask their employer to take a few months off so they can figure out how to restore their sleep so they can get their function back. They said they just couldn't manage anything at work. They're barely managing just getting everything done and just their everyday meals and everyday life at home. So I know how this can be. And it's not actually that uncommon. So many people I talk to are sleep deprived, and there's many different reasons we can be sleep deprived. Let's face it, some of it can be self-induced, staying up too late, being on screens at night, maybe eating sugar before bed, really just not having a great sleep routine. But many women that are suffering from these sleep troubles do have a good routine. And this is still happening, and they can't figure out why. And many women I work with have also tried several different supplements. They've tried medications. They'll help short term, they'll help for a period of time, but they don't help long term. And they find they either have to increase the dose of the supplement or the medication. And then with that often comes some side effects, and they don't want to have to keep doing this. And the reality is if this is what you're having to do to help you manage your sleep and just get enough hours so that you can function in your everyday life, you're probably not getting to the root cause of why you have the sleep imbalances in the first place. So the reason women can get more sleep imbalances, lighter sleep, not sleeping as well, waking up more often as they get into their 40s and early 50s, part of it does have to do with your female hormones shifting and changing, estrogen and progesterone. When these hormone levels are at a little bit higher amount and they're well balanced, we will tend to have better quality sleep. We'll have good deep sleep. We'll wake up feeling rested and ready to start our day. The average amount of sleep we should be getting is a minimum of 7 to 8 hours a night. So if you're getting anywhere between 2 and 4, I know many women I work with say they're getting, 4 or 5, maybe 6, you're really chronically sleep deprived, and it's going to be affecting your executive function at work. It's going to be affecting your ability to communicate with people at home, outside of the home. Probably is affecting your emotions. You probably don't feel as clear as you could be on your everyday life tasks. And I'm sure it's affecting your emotional health, your physical health, even. So we know that we need to get you a solution and something that's actually going to last, not just a supplement that you're trying every different thing on the shelf and you've got a cupboard full of them, but you don't know which one works anymore and which one doesn't. And really, in the end, none of them helped you as much as you had hoped. If this sounds familiar, what I would suggest is that we look at the root cause of why you're having this in the first place. So very commonly, because the female sex hormones are lowering estrogen and progesterone, it will cause a little bit lighter sleep. Estrogen in particular helps you with that deep sleep, and then progesterone will help you to sustain your sleep throughout the night. And both of these hormones are on the lower, they're on the decline as you get closer to that transition into menopause. So it does make sense that your sleep isn't as good, but some women will have more of these extremes. And so I really, if you feel like you are having some of these extremes where you're consistently well under that 7 to 8 hours a night, something needs to happen. It's not just related to your female sex hormones, because if it was, every single woman that went through this transition in life between their 40s and early to mid 50s would be really sleep deprived like you are. So there has to be something else going on. And so what I have seen quite consistently when we start to probe and understand the history with each female that I work with, especially the ones that are chronically very, very sleep deprived, is that there tends to be a pattern. And one of them does tend to be that they aren't actually having consistent meals throughout the day. They're skipping meals. They're not eating frequently enough. They might be skipping breakfast or skipping lunch or having big, long periods during the day where they're not actually eating at all. And then they will tend to feel hungry and they'll get a lot of their calories in later in the day, and sometimes even right before bed. And sometimes those calories also are not the best quality calories. Sometimes they're more of what I would call those empty carbohydrates, things that convert very quickly to sugar in the body. And so often this is something that females become more sensitive to as we get older as well, and as our hormone levels decline, and that is insulin. And so our blood sugars are more likely to fluctuate more as our hormone levels lower. So if we're eating foods that are a little bit higher in carbohydrate and we're eating them more in the back half of the day, especially closer to bed, what can happen is it will start to affect our sleep. It'll affect our ability to get to sleep, because it actually, when our blood sugars spike, when we eat a meal, especially a meal that has carbohydrate in it and sugar, it'll spike our cortisol as well. And what should be happening in the night, really from about 3-4 p.m. onwards, is our cortisol levels are lowering, and they're lowering enough that we start to feel sleepy and want to go to bed. But if we eat something, right before bed, and it's got a bit of carbohydrate and a bit of sugar, it'll actually reverse that curve and it'll start to lift. And so we will become a little more alert, a little more awake, and that will impact our ability to get to sleep. Some people, though, they won't necessarily notice this spike outwardly. It's just happening internally in the body. And so as you get the spike, what will typically happen after that is the blood sugars and the cortisol will crash and come down low. And that's often when women actually wake up in the night. They'll wake up between 12, 1, 2 in the morning, and they say they have no idea why they're awake. I mean, someone will report that they have like temperature fluctuation or a flash, and that wakes them. But often the reason even for this has to do also with the big drop in blood sugars that can happen if the blood sugars are out of balance. So there is a solution to this, and it does require some customized treatment with some customized lab testing to understand the pattern of what's happening with your blood sugars and your cortisol levels during the day. So this is one way that we can get to an individualized plan and help you develop a solution. And it does have to do with eating the right types of foods at the right types of day that are going to work to help you stabilize your blood sugars and your cortisol, so that when it is time to go to bed, those two things are in balance, and you're much more likely to have not only enough sleep, so less wake ups in the night, but also better quality sleep. So this is one thing that can be, I find, very often disruptive for females in this time period of life. Another reason I find that women are very sleep deprived has to do with elevated cortisol, which doesn't just come from eating a sugary meal before bed. It also comes from being under chronic stress. And many women are under chronic stress. And in a way, it is very cruel the way our bodies work, because as we get into our 40s and our female sex hormones are lowering, 40s, early 50s, something that can actually help buffer that high cortisol is progesterone, and then secondarily estrogen. And progesterone is on the decline more quickly than estrogen. So we don't actually have that buffer for that cortisol as much as we may have had 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we're going to feel that stress all the more. And what happens when we feel stressed and our cortisol is high is it won't allow us to get into a relaxed state to sleep. And if it does, if we're tired enough and we can get ourselves to sleep, and I know some women tell me they're just not sleeping enough, so they just crash out of exhaustion, at 8, 9, or 10 o'clock at night. But because the cortisol is not actually balanced and it's too high still, then they wake up. They wake up at 2 or 3 hours later, and often they can't get back to sleep. And, this can be because they have things on their mind, stressors they're thinking about, but it can sometimes be more physiological too. And it's not that we're necessarily thinking about things all night. It's just that our cortisol is too high. It's out of balance. And it's actually a result of what's happened throughout the day. So we do need to understand if this is happening. Again, we need to make sure you do the right lab testing, but it's also very important for us to understand what kind of techniques can we use to help you buffer and manage this higher stress that's lifting your cortisol and affecting your sleep. And so the management techniques are going to be different for everyone, but typically things that will help to lower cortisol are things like going out for a walk, doing some consistent breathing, paying attention to your breath, slowing it down, going out in nature, increasing the oxygen around you by being out amongst the trees, doing some yoga, maybe mixing it in with some meditation, or maybe you just do some meditation on your own without the yoga. These are all things that can help bring that cortisol back down into balance. And if you are suffering from sleep deprivation, there are definitely strategies I suggest you try, and you probably will find that some of them work better than others for you, and you may have a bit of trial and error, but you really need to put in some strategies for managing and lowering your cortisol, especially if you have a busy life, and most females do. They can't necessarily quit their job, slow down on the tasks they've got to do at home or, with their family life, their social life. Although if you can, I do encourage you to. There is sometimes a time where we need to slow these things down, but I know we can't always. So we need to come up with techniques to help us buffer this cortisol, or we won't be able to get to sleep, stay asleep, and have good quality sleep, especially as estrogen and progesterone are lowering. because they're something that is a little bit protective of our good quality sleep. And as those hormones lower, if we don't have balanced cortisol, oh, are we going to feel it? And we're going to be very disrupted. And it really becomes a cycle, because when you stop sleeping, you don't get a reset in other systems of the body at night. You don't get resets in your inflammatory pathways, in your immune system. And so it really can actually put you at higher risk for development of a chronic disease or condition. I mean, there's definitely research out there as well that does suggest chronic sleep deprivation. For example, people that are shift workers, it actually can shorten your life, on average, because of the negative impacts that it can have on so many different areas and systems in your body. So it really is essential that you get your sleep back. And it won't just happen on its own as the hormone levels start to lower. There's some things that you're really going to have to interject on to get that balance back. But again, the first step is testing. We need to understand, what is the status of your blood sugar balance? What is the status of your cortisol levels? How are those in reflection with your female sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone? What's out of balance there the most? And what do you need to do? How do we develop an individualized plan to help you learn how to get the balance back in those pathways so that you can get a better sleep? And unfortunately, it's not as simple as just taking supplements to try and help you manage and get by with your sleep, or taking sleep medications. There is lifestyle strategies that need to be interjected on and intervened to help you get your sleep back and maintain it long term. So I hope this resonates with you. If you are suffering from sleep deprivation, you need help. And I help women like this all the time. And we really have to peel back the layers of the onion. We have to understand why it's happening in the first place. There's no quick fix solution to getting your sleep back on track, especially for the long term, but there is a way to do it. So if you do want to connect with me, you want to reach out. I'm a functional medicine practitioner. I work with females all the time, just like you, that are getting closer to and transitioning into menopause and suffering from many symptoms, including sleep deprivation. So you can reach out to me. Please feel free to go to my website, www.angelasimpsonfunctionalmedicine.ca. And that's where we could potentially book a complimentary consult, talk about your health, talk about your sleep deprivation, other potential symptoms that you might be having as you're getting closer to and transitioning into menopause, and see if it might be a good fit for us to work together to help you get your health back on track. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for coming to my YouTube channel. I hope you subscribe and become a member, and I look forward to bringing you more videos soon. Bye for now.